Good day, class. Today, this will be our first topic on introduction to research. And we will begin with the first topic on uh, introduction to research methodology. Okay. So, and these are the learning objectives for today's session that at the end, you will be able to define research and its value, identify the different classification of research, and then describe the process of research. Now, let us define what research is. Research is defined as a systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic, a careful, organized, and well-planned investigation of a problem. And many times, that information on a specific topic is a problem that the researcher wants to solve. It will be a careful and organized, well-planned investigation of that problem. And its value is as a scientific investigation, well, to discover new knowledge, a tool that one can use to test this new knowledge. Please understand that when we do make researches, we want to discover new knowledge. Many times I see people making researches and they make researches for things that are already known, for things that we already know, for things that are already established. Somehow, if we want to make a research, that research has to discover, to contribute new knowledge. As an orderly system of solving problems, research can be a tool for growth of science and a tool for human development and environmental development. You see, the growth of science, and I am referring specifically to medicine, is always connected to researches. And I would like to believe that one of the most dynamic sciences, if not the most dynamic science, is the field of medicine. And it is actually research that contributes to its dynamism. The methods of research are useful in the evaluation of health programs, procedures, systems such as delivery of health services, or program planning. Well, in medicine, we will be a lot of uses of research. But in medicine, we want to focus on the evaluation of health programs that will aid in the delivery of health services and program planning. Purpose: to establish the truth. Many times, there are many issues coming up, there are many opinions, and we want to establish the truth, so we make research. To develop new knowledge and technology, I discussed this a while ago, that research must develop, must contribute new knowledge, and to add to the scientific knowledge. And lastly, to improve the practice of the profession, really ultimately for the attainment of better health for the people. Our research should ultimately aim to attain better health for the people. And I would like to give you the different kinds of research that we will be giving more emphasis in this class. Broadly, based on broad objectives, research may be classified as whether it is basic, epidemiologic, and clinical. Basic research uses healthy humans and experimental animals as subjects, and it aims to develop better understanding of the nature, including relationship of normal events in the human body, and it serves as basis for some future action or application in biomedical sciences. You see, class, for this particular subject, we don't want you to make basic researches. Rather, we want you to make the next kind of research, the epidemiologic research. And it uses the population or groups of people, healthy or with the disease, as subjects. And its primary use is identification of risk factors, causes of diseases that serve as basis for the development of preventive measures. You see, class, there are a lot of things that we still do not know in medicine. Even in this age of computerization, even this age of technology, of advancement in technology, even in this age of internet technology, we have sent people to the moon. A lot of advances that we didn't have that much advances during during the olden times. So much advances in technology, in almost everything, and yet we still do not know much about many things, many diseases in the field of medicine. For example, hypertension. Hypertension seems to be a very common disease, but do you know that the cause of hypertension is still unknown? Okay, we have two kinds of hypertension. You will later know when you would go into pathology in the second year. There is such thing as primary hypertension or secondary hypertension. Well, secondary hypertension is easy to define. The hypertension is secondary to something. For example, it is secondary to hyperthyroidism. It is secondary to pheochromocytoma. It is secondary to renal artery disease, etc. A lot of secondary causes of hypertension, and we call them secondary hypertension. As I said a while ago, the first kind of hypertension is what we call the primary hypertension. As a matter of fact, of the secondary and the primary hypertension, the most common type of hypertension is primary. Almost about 90% of hypertension is primary. But what does exactly primary hypertension mean? Well, it is not secondary to something, that's why it's called primary. Except that hypertension should really be secondary to something. Hypertension just means that the blood pressure is high. But that hypertension, that high blood pressure, should be secondary to something. Except that we don't know what's causing it. So we have secondary hypertension, which causes we know, as I mentioned a while ago. But with primary hypertension, we still do not know the cause. That's why we call it primary hypertension. You see, when we actually call a disease a hypertension, primary hypertension, it just exposes our ignorance as to the cause of the hypertension. We do not know what's causing exactly the hypertension. And so, we talk of risk factors rather than causes. We talk of risk factors. And this is where epidemiological researches come in. It is in epidemiological researches that we try to identify risk factors for diseases. And there are still other many diseases which we really don't know yet the exact cause. And therefore, we will still be talking of risk factors. We will still be talking of risk factors. Now, clinical research is done on patients. Its objective is understanding the disease process, including identification of determinants of the outcome of illness. And it forms the basis for the development of technology for the diagnosis and treatment of the disease. Well, for you, first year, or later on, when you would have become second year students, and you will start making researches, we really don't want you much to make clinical researches, because clinical researches are done on patients. Sorry. Sorry. And you don't see patients yet, not yet. Anyway, when you would have become residents later on, then you will be doing clinical researches. Now, let's talk about the research process. The research process is similar to undertaking a journey. And in that journey, two important decisions need to be made. What we want to find out about, or what research questions or problems we want to find answers to. And then, how to go about finding their answers. And there are practical steps through which we must pass in our research journey in order to find answers to our research questions. And the path to finding answers to our research questions constitutes what we call research methodology. And these are the steps in the research process. You can see these steps practically all in many sources and many topics on researches. So the steps are more or less the same. We first formulate the research problem, and then we review the literature, we develop the objectives, prepare the research design, determine the sampling methodology, collect data, analyze the data, generalize, interpret results, and then lastly, prepare the report. Well, we want to collect data. If you are talking of a proposal, when you will now start implementing your paper, you will start collecting data up to the step 9. So we talk first of formulating the research problem. This is just a very short discussion on the research problem. In a little while, we'll give much more detailed discussion on the research problem. And this is the first and the most crucial step in the research process. Its main function is to decide what you want to find out about, and the way the problem is formulated determines almost every step that follows. Okay, and then after we have identified the research problem, we review the literature to acquaint ourselves with available body of knowledge in our area of interest. And the review of literature is an integral part of entire research process and makes valuable contribution to every operational step. And this will again be our topic next week. Its functions bring clarity and focus to our research problem, improve our methodology, broaden our problem, broaden our knowledge, and contextualize our findings. Now, and then next, we develop the objectives. Objectives are goals that we set out to attain in our study. They inform the reader what we want to attain through the study, and it is extremely important to formulate them clearly and specifically. We'll have a separate topic probably 2 weeks from now on objective formulation, and then we will discuss to you very, very thoroughly the objectives. But by now, I'll just tell you the objectives are listed. You know this under general and specific objectives. Later on, we'll be talking much of objectives because I would like to give much discussion of this later on. And then we prepare the research design. This is another very big topic. We'll have 2 weeks for this research design. There's a conceptual structure within which the research will be conducted. And the function of the research design is to provide for the collection of relevant information with minimal expenditure of effort, time, and money. Okay, so the preparation of research design appropriate for a particular research problem, meaning what research design to use, involves consideration of the following: the objectives of the study, the method of data collection to be adopted, source of information and sampling design, tool for data collection, and data analysis. Again, as I said, we'll have a separate, very lengthy discussion on research design. And then determine sampling methodology. Again, that's a separate topic. Researchers usually draw conclusions about large groups by taking a sample. A sample is a segment of the population selected to represent the population as a whole. And ideally, the sample should be representative and should allow the researcher to make accurate estimates of the characteristics and behavior of a larger population. We'll talk much more about sampling methodology in another week. And then we collect data. The construction of research instrument or tool for data collection is one of the most important aspects of a research project, because anything that we say by way of findings or conclusions is based on the type of the information that we collect. And the data that we collect is entirely dependent upon the questions that we ask of the respondents. We'll talk about data collection as well. And then we analyze the data. We process and analyze the data, and that involves a number of closely related operations, summarizing the collected data and organizing them in a manner that they answer the research questions or the research objectives. And lastly, writing the report. That's the last and for many the most difficult step in the research process. The report informs the world what we have done, what we have discovered, what conclusions we have drawn from our findings. It should be written in an academic style. Language should be formal and not journalistic. Now, we begin with the formulation of the research problem. And as we said, this is the first and the most important step. Okay, so as we said, research problem is the first and the most crucial step in the research process, and its identification, meaning what the researcher wants to solve and what questions he wishes to answer, its identification, the identification of the research problem is really the first and the most crucial step in the research process. You see, many people talk, when many people say that research begins with the research question. And that is why even when I was still studying my master's, our professors would always say to us, ask us, what is your research question? And so it seems that research question begins, that researches begin with a research question. But I would like to believe, well, that can be true, but I would like to believe that the research question should begin with the research problem. You cannot ask a research question without a research problem. And that is why I said that the research problem is the first and the most crucial step in that process. So when people come to me for research consultation, they tell me, sir, is this a good topic for research? And then the first question that I ask of them is, what is the problem? What is the problem? Because really, later on, when you write the introduction, and I will be talking of how to write the introduction when you would have become second year students, hopefully next year, 1 year from now, we will teach you how to write the introduction. The introduction, that is where you write your research problem. That is the issue that leads to the need for the study. The issue to be settled. And the research problem is an area of concern, a gap in the existing knowledge, or a deviation from the norm that leads to the need for further studies. So the reason why I would want to make a study is that I see a problem, a gap in the existing knowledge. So I see this problem that I want now to make a research to fill in that gap, to solve that problem. Now, the main function of the research problem is really to decide what we want to find out about. Because without a problem, really there is no need for one to undertake a research. And the research problem is central to research, that its identification and its definition is the starting point of any research activity. You need to identify and define the problem. And its identification and definition should be made as clearly as possible. Because when the problem is not clear, it would be difficult for one to understand the significance of the study. That is why later on, I'm going to teach you how to write the introduction. You will know, you will understand that we have to be very, very clear on what the problem is. Now, we go to the research question. The research problem is often confused with the research question. The question that the investigator wants to answer in order to explain the problem. The question to be answered or resolved. The research question is, as we said, formulated from a research problem. So when people will say, this is my research question, okay, I normally ask them, what is the research problem? What is the research problem? Class, may I emphasize to you that when people talk of a research question, when people talk of a research problem, they are talking of a research question. But the research problem is really a problem that is really different from a research question. As I said, the research question should originate from the research problem. And the research question is phrased in such a way that answers to the research questions will help solve the research problem. So we have a problem, then we formulate a research question, and if you are able to answer that research question, then you will help solve the research problem. It can be an inquiry about the relationship among variables that the investigator wants to know. Well, just one example of a research question. In the research question, a clearly defined research question should give the researcher greater clarity on developing the research protocol, designing the study, and analyzing the data. If you are able now to clearly define your research question. And in contrast, a poorly formulated research question will lead to the perception that the research was not well thought out. But for one to be able to clearly define a research question, we need to go back to the research problem. So the research problem should be clearly and specifically defined, because you cannot clearly define as well the research question if in the first place the research problem is not clear and specific. Now, what's research hypothesis? These are predictions that researcher makes about the expected relationship among variables, a statement of what the researcher believes in regarding the supposed relationship. Many times when we talk of a hypothesis, we talk of a relationship. A hypothesis really is a concept or idea that you test through research or experimentation. It is a prediction that, meaning it can be tested, that can be tested by research. When the researchers come up with a hypothesis statement at the beginning of the study, you make a prediction about the outcome at the start of the study and conduct the study to test whether this prediction holds true or not. Now, let's give an example of a research problem, a research question, and a research hypothesis. First, let's talk of a research hypothesis. There is a well-established association between shorter adult height and an increased risk of coronary artery disease, CAD. And the precise mechanisms linking shorter height with an increased risk of CAD remain unclear. Many times, when I ask people, not only students, but even doctors, when I ask people, because I give this lecture as well, not only to you students, but to doctors as well, when I give this statement, this slide, I will ask them, what do you think is the research problem? And more often than not, the answer to that question is, the research problem is the relationship, the association between shorter adult height and an increased risk of coronary artery disease. That's not the research problem, because as they stated here, there is a well-established association, meaning the association between height and CAD, risk of CAD, is already established. So that's not the problem. The problem is that the mechanisms linking shorter adult height with an increased risk of CAD remain unclear. That is the problem. Now, and so we formulate a research question. And as we said a while ago, the research question is an attempt to solve a research problem so that answers to the research question will help solve the research problem. And so we ask, can genetic variants that affect a trait provide a means of exploring the relationship between height and CAT? So if you are able to answer that question, and then you will be able to know the answer to the problem that we have stated a while ago. In a hypothesis, as a matter of fact, the statement of the research question and the research hypothesis can be very, very much the same, except that one is a question, a research question, and the other, this one, is a hypothesis, what you believe in. And so we say genetic variants that affect a trait provide a means of exploring the relationship between height and CAT. This is what the researcher believes in, and so he now makes a research to answer that question. But I would like you to note that the research problem is a statement. It is not a question. But many people ask a research question when they talk of a statement of the problem. And I see this quite often especially among students. And sometimes these students still, when they become doctors, when they become residents, they still talk of the same things that they talked when they were in pre-med or even in med school. This is an example. And I say this is a misnomer statement of the problem. The heading says statement of the problem. And then it asks a question. Do satisfied employees perform better? Conversely, if employees are satisfied, would they be motivated to work hard, be loyal, and stay devoted to the hospital? You will note, class, that these are questions, not statements. Nor are they a problem. Let's just go back. So these are questions. Do satisfied employees perform better? Conversely, if employees are satisfied, would they be motivated to work hard, be loyal, and stay devoted to the hospital? So first, this is not a statement, it's a question. Neither are these are a problem. These are not problems. Do satisfied employees perform better? Is that a problem? If employees are satisfied, would they be motivated to work hard? Is that a problem? So that's why I said this is a misnomer. They are more appropriately called, these are actually research questions. And so I talked to this, actually the one who made this, the one who made this is a nurse taking up Master of Arts in nursing, and she consulted with me, and then I talked about the meaning of what is the meaning of a research problem. A research problem should really be a statement of the problem, should really be a statement of the problem. And so I talked about this one. I said I defined to this person what is the meaning of a research problem. What is the meaning of the statement of a research problem? As a matter of fact, we don't have to really give details as to the meaning of the statement of the research problem, because it means exactly what it means, what it says. Okay, statement of the problem. Nothing else. Nothing else. So this nurse was able to revise the statement of the problem. There is a high employee turnover rate in Hospital A, especially in the nursing unit. That's a problem. That's a statement of the problem. And this high rate has resulted to inconsistent delivery of good quality service to patients, a need to give continuous training, additional expenses in searching for qualified replacements and training, and loss of morale of employees. Again, these are statements of, well, this is a statement of a research problem. So this should be this should how a statement of the problem be stated. It should state specifically what the problem is, and the problems were stated very specifically. High turnover rate, resulting to inconsistent delivery of good quality service, need to give continuous training, additional expenses in searching for qualified replacement, training, and loss of morale of employees. These are now specific, clear statements of the problem. And so, because she was able to to state the problem specifically and clearly, she was able to make a good research question. She was able now on her own, without me prodding her, without me coaching her, she was able to formulate a much better, clearly defined research question. So what are the factors affecting turnover rate of Hospital A? Specifically, our demographic profile, perception of salary rate, job satisfaction, and workplace stress related to turnover rate in Hospital A. Okay, so you will note that these are research questions about the research problem that was identified a while ago. Okay, and if that person is able to answer this research question, then that person would be able to answer the problem that she stated a while ago. You will note later on when we talk of objective formulation, you will note later on I'll give you a word about this demographic profile. I see a lot of people making a research question on the demographic profile. And there is here a question on demographic profile which is appropriate because this demographic profile is related to turnover rate. That's why the question is, are the demographic profile, perception of salary rate, so just one, the demographic profile, others the perception. These are factors that can affect turnover rate in that particular hospital. But the inappropriate research questions people ask is, a lot of people do is, what are the demographic profile of the respondents, who their respondents are. Don't talk of that as a research question because that will not solve the research problem. That has nothing to do with the research problem. Later on, we'll talk of this demographic profile when we talk of objective formulation. And then the hypothesis, perception of low salary rate, poor job satisfaction, and workplace stress make employees leave Hospital A. That is now the research hypothesis. Do not confuse the research problem with the research question. And before I leave this topic, specifically on research hypothesis class, when you would have gone to the second year, and when you start writing your research protocol, I don't want you to be talking of the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. I want you to talk of a research hypothesis. You will notice that I never mentioned about the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis, even if I am a statistician. Now, what are the sources of the research problems? Meaning, where do we get research problems? You see, a lot of many budding researchers, budding, budding, meaning beginners, budding researchers now, don't know much where to get research problem. Later on, because this research problem come from our own experiences. Okay, later on we'll talk about that. So first, this intellectual curiosity. For any professional not so much adept in doing research, intellectual curiosity is the most common source of research problems. Intellectual curiosity. In the course of his practice, he often comes across some problems he cannot solve or questions he cannot answer. If he is alert to research opportunities, this could be the origin of a research problem. So he has a practice, professional, this is his practice, this is what he sees in his practice, and he sees a gap, something that he feels is a problem. And so he thinks, okay, this probably might be the solution to this problem. So if he is alert to research opportunities, this could be the origin of a research problem. Intellectual curiosity. Serendipity. When research methodology was less developed, this was often the beginning of a research. Something happens at the right time and place to the right individual. Or an idea simply comes up to the individual who has a research interest. Truth to tell, a lot of discoveries many years ago were from this serendipity. Penicillin, for example, erythromycin. The scientists discovered these things because of, by way of serendipity. Analysis of needs and practice. Researchers generally identify research problems by careful appraisal of the needs or situational analysis of a particular subject that's of interest to them. From the analysis, gaps in knowledge, technology, or skill for which research is indicated are identified. So these are my needs, and there seems to be gap in the knowledge, gap in my needs, so I make research of this. From an organized and systematic determination of research needs. You see, class, identification of research problem here in the Philippines has been raised to higher plane by the Philippine Council for Research and Development, PCHRD, that's under the DOST. Gaps in knowledge and research needs in health and medicine have been determined by panel of experts. They have actually compiled this research agenda, this research problems, needs as research agenda in a manual called NUHRA, N-U-H-R-A, that is National Unified Health Research Agenda. You can actually search for that, and then you can make researches aligned with NUHRA. As a matter of fact, if you want to make researches, then you make researches aligned with NUHRA, your research can be funded. And I would like to think that this is one of the most common sources of the research problem, especially for budding, as I said, budding researchers, for people who are just beginners, especially for students, for you students, you don't have much experience yet and seeing patients. So you really would not be able to make to get problems related to the diseases. And that's the reason why when students make researches, okay, a lot of researches are related to academic performance because precisely that is the problem of students. But really, class, it's better that you make researches related to diseases. So sources from medical journals, from PubMed, from Medline, from Herdin. That's this Herdin is a local journal, and from freemedicaljournals.com. Even in the comforts of your homes, you can look for free medical journals from this website, freemedicaljournals.com. But our FEU library, and later on when we talk of review of literature, I will be talking of how to access journals, medical journals from the library, from our library. Majority among residents get topics from medical journals. They always tell me, sir, when they consult me for their study, for their research, they would always tell me, sir, this is my source. And then they give me that particular journal. This is what I want to make as my own research. Considerations in selecting a research problem. What are the considerations that we make, that we do? Okay, researchability. A problem is researchable if it can be resolved through research, meaning it can be tested empirically, data can be collected to answer the question or resolve the problem. So we need a problem should be researchable because there are other questions about which information we cannot collect. Example, should same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines? Can painkiller be used even if its administration can shorten the life of the patient? These are questions that are not researchable. Should same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines? This is not a researchable question. We cannot collect data to answer this question. Now, if the first question about same-sex marriage is changed to, do people think same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines? Then it becomes researchable because now we can collect data to answer that question. Please remember, the problem question is researchable if it can be resolved through research by way of data collection. Now we can collect data to help us answer the question. Okay. Clarity. Terms and concepts have to be clearly defined. We'll give you a separate topic on operational definition. In a research study, it's important that concepts used be operationalized, measurable terms, so that the extent of variation of respondents' understanding is reduced, if not eliminated. Significance. Research questions should be worth investigating. In essence, we need to consider whether a question is worth spending time, energy, and often money to get an answer. You see, class, understandably, admittedly, making a research is not easy. Well, it's not difficult. It's not difficult, but it's not easy. It's not really that easy, I should say. And if I have to make research, that research should be worth spending my time, energy, and money. It should be significant. It should be significant. And the problem is significant if it affects a large population. If it affects only a very few population, then it does not have that much significance. Because serious morbidity consequences. This is one of the most important considerations that we should look for, because even if the population affected is not that large, but because a disease has a serious morbidity consequences, then researches to that topic should be significant. For example, AIDS. AIDS does not affect a very large population as other diseases do. Not much with AIDS. But because it has serious morbidity consequences, researches on AIDS should be significant. And it is related to an ongoing project. It's a priority project of the government, of the DOH, of the institution. Then that becomes, researches on that become significant. It is also significant if answer to the question fills a gap in knowledge or technology. So it will help fill in that gap. It will contribute new knowledge. It has practical application. It will improve the practice of the profession. It will result to attainment of better health of the people, better healthcare service delivery. Another consideration is that of feasibility. An important issue in designing research studies is that of feasibility. Feasible question is one that can be investigated with available resources. To look into whether research question is feasible, we examine whether are there enough subjects that you can gather? Are the procedures technically possible? Do you have equipment? Are you capable? Do you have equipment to be able to implement your proposal, your protocol? Do you have enough resources? Can information be collected, enough available resources, and the study can be completed within a reasonable period of time? Students' researches should be completed in less than one semester. I mean, at least data collection should be done in about a month, less than a month, or at most 1 month to be able to finish it. Critical mass. The research problem is broad and large enough such that there would be adequate mass of information to work on. It should not be too specific or too small in scope as to limit the researcher to collect only one or two variables. Need to collect more variables. It should have enough critical mass. Critical mass means enough variable to collect. Adequate mass of information to work on. For example, in a study that seeks to determine the association between aortic arc calcification in chest X-ray and coronary artery disease, if these two variables, aortic arc calcification and coronary arteries, the only variables to collect, then the study lacks critical mass. Interest. Though interest alone may not be a sufficient justification for an investigation of a research problem, there must be a current interest in the problem area, not only for the researcher, but for the general population as well. The research question must be in the priority of or within the national or institutional mission. Research questions should investigate relationship. They frequently, well, but not always, suggest a relationship of some sort to be investigated. And a suggested relationship means two qualities or characteristics are tied together or connected in some way. Well, better that you make researches that investigate a relationship. Research investigates relationship, the study becomes an analytic study. Examples of researches that investigate relationship. These are research questions. Is there a relationship between chronotypes of individuals and their intelligence? Is there a relationship between BMI and asthma? Is interpregnancy interval associated with gestational DM? What is the relationship between socio-economic status and job abuse? Okay, so these research questions investigate relationship. Well, just to show to you the meaning of relationship, to the left in this on this table, okay, we talk of agreement to same-sex marriage in the urban and in the rural area. You will note here that the number of people or the proportion of people who agree with same-sex marriage in the urban and in the rural is just the same. So there is no relationship between same-sex agreement to same-sex marriage in the urban and in the rural areas. But in this table, in the second table to your right, a lot more people in the urban areas agree with the same-sex marriage compared to the rural areas. So in this particular table, hypothetical data, there is a relationship between same-sex marriage, between agreement to same-sex marriage and place of residence. If there is a difference, there is a relationship. Now, let's talk about how do we formulate the research problem. So we identify or we determine the topic of interest, then you dissect many times. The topic of interest can be broad, and you need to dissect the broad area into sub-areas. The researcher should first identify the general area of interest, and we should narrow this down to specific topics or subjects, because broad problems have various facets or components. Need to break down the broad problems into smaller components or sub-problems. Later on, this broad problem becomes the general objective, in the specific topics narrowed down the components, the various facets and components of this broad problem becomes the specific objectives. So, example, a research question from a main problem or from a broad problem: what are the factors affecting turnover rate in hospital A? So these factors is rather broad. You need to distinguish. You need to dissect these factors to make it specific. So you dissect the broad question to a specific research question, or demographic profile, perception of salary rate, job satisfaction, workplace stress related to turnover rate in hospital A. So this now becomes the specific components, facets of this broad question that is factors. Then you clarify the problem statement, clarify what you really want to find out, use clear terms. For example, use the term effectiveness instead of benefits, accuracy instead of usefulness. So, for example, health status can be described as nutritional status using the Z-scores of BMI or presence or absence of intestinal elements. So just talk of specific. You need to really be specific rather than talk of health status, talk of nutritional status using that. And then clarify the problem statement. Again, problem clarification is aided by the literature review and or consultation with experts. They can provide information on the current problem, what has been done, and the methods used in resolving similar or related problems. This is my last slide, and I hope you'll be able, if you don't understand, you can ask me questions, clarifications in class. Thank you, and again, good day.